Hey everybody, how we doing? It's Rusty back with another budget vintage video, and I've got some very exciting news and developments to share. Something I'm very excited about personally. Um, so we have been trying pretty hard to share the good word locally, spread the gospel, as you will, and kind of just make people aware of this format because, again, I think this format is incredible. It's a $30 budget vintage for those of you who don't know. It is the vintage banned and restricted list, so you can play any card throughout all of Magic's history, and things don't really get banned. You're allowed to play Treasure Cruise and Tinker and Luris, but the trick is you've only got $30 to work with. So we price off of TCG Player Market. We usually use Moxfield because that's the easiest way for us to check prices. And that is the whole concept. It's 1v1 60 card deck, or I guess 75 if you're a Yorian kind of person. 80, I don't know where I got 75 from. Anyway, so that's the format. Most of you who are tuned in probably know that, but not all of you, so I wanted to get that out. And so we've been talking it up lately, and just last night, we had our first event at another shop from our home shop. One of our local shops, a small pod got really into it, and they decided to host $30 Thursdays. So every Thursday this month, they're going to be hosting $30 budget vintage, which is awesome. That's so great. We did a no entry fee tournament, so no prize support really. There was some foil promo pack for first, which had a foil Jetmir's Garden in it, pretty good. But this was a no entry fee, no payout tournament. And we got 23 people playing. That's it. We're done. We got 23 people. We can all go home. That's amazing. One of the goals that I kind of outlined that would be really nice to hit this year was a 24-player tournament. I thought maybe we would do the Win a Box / Win a Taiga in February, then do some other stuff, and eventually hit 24. And we haven't done that yet, but we did hit 23 on our first event outside of our home store. Which feels awesome. It was really cool seeing a huge influx of new players because there were, 10 or 15 players, maybe there were probably 10 players who hadn't really played before. They were, just getting into the format in the past couple of weeks. So we got to see some really crazy brews, and honestly, it was just awesome. Kind of feeling the energy, seeing what everyone's been cooking up, hearing people talk about what they thought was cool or spicy or what they were excited for. And it was just really fun to be in that environment, playing this format that we all love. And just from talking to people, I'm hearing so many stories about people losing sleep, thinking about the cards they want to put into decks. People's Moxfield accounts are getting incredibly full of deck lists that they're working on. I know I'm not the only one who's laying in bed at night, and then I pick up my phone and blind myself because I just have to do a Scryfall search to find something, or I have to price a card to see if I can build around it. So basically what I'm saying is $30 budget vintage is ruining our lives, and we're here for it. So again, 23-person format, 23-person tournament. That's the biggest tournament for this that I have personally seen. So we got some really cool data. Now keep in mind that the meta is still very much in flux, as I think it will be for quite a long time, but we're seeing some cool stuff. So I thought what I would do today, since we're between brackets, I do have news about that. Good news. We're between brackets, and quite frankly, I don't have content prepped for tomorrow. I decided to throw this together and just talk about some of the decks. So, as you can see, we have our list here. We had 23 players. I don't know why I cut off the bottom. Sorry, Doug and Bailey. I guess I had to stop somewhere, and this is as far as I copied. Top 8 is what we're going to focus on, as well as the decks that I thought were super nifty, which was actually all of them, so maybe we'll talk about them all briefly. A couple notable things. Martyr proc won. We're all very upset about that. Our friend Will's been playing Martyr proc for a long time and picking up a lot of W's. And he does this really awful thing when he beats you, where he goes like he's dusting his hands of you because he beat you with a mono white deck. It's very funny in person. But we need to stop playing decks that lose to Martyr proc, guys. I am sick of it. So if you take one thing from this video, take it as a call to arms. We need to beat Martyr proc. Other things that are cool, Slivers in the top 4. I got dumpstered by Slivers. Nick ran me over in minutes. I think that's cool. I love Rakdos Laris Pyromancer. The Zombie Infestation deck was cool. I mean, all of these are just cool decks. You read the list and it's like, these decks, a lot of them seem like really made up, right? Like Asmo, Tinker for Treasure, Zubera Storm. That's crazy. What format is this? So anyway, we're going to jump in and we're going to check out some lists. First, I'll talk about the boring bad deck that I played. I think I've done a deck tech for this before. It's a blue-red Hottie Gen list. I like it. I don't think it's very good, but I think it's very fun. Also, blanket statement before I go on. These decks are probably not below $30 at the time of recording. They probably were below $30, or I remember when I was sitting down, I checked the price of my list. It was at $30.01, and then I trimmed a sun droplet from my sideboard, and I didn't adjust my list. So all of the lists are going to clock in at a little bit above $30 probably. You don't have to comment that. It's okay. No one cheated. Anyway, this is a blue-red spells list. It plays Frantic Inventory and Accumulated Knowledge to get graveyard value, pitching them to Faithless Looting, cast cheap Tolarian Terrors, and big Hottie Gens. Then we try to finish the game with a Teamer Battle Rage on a large Hottie Gen, sometimes going for 20 damage in one shot. And we have Apostle's Blessing to protect it, which notably only costs 2 life when Hottie Gen is in play because it discounts it. This is what I played. I really enjoyed it. I went 2-2. I thought it was a strong 2-2. I didn't feel bad about it. But I'll talk a bit about my games, and I just wanted you guys to have the deck list going into that. But what I'm more excited to talk about are other people's decks, because I like them even more. So we're going to go through the top 8, starting from the top. This is Martyr proc. It will be on the next bracket, so we'll actually see some games with it soon, and we will see how it does. I suspect it'll do pretty well. This is a mono-white list looking to leverage the card advantage engine's Abiding Grace, and I'll let you read that. Good, you've read it. Thank you. And Sky Hussar. These are both really innocuous looking, but when you have a deck that has so many 1-drops, right? You can count them. I'm not going to do the math, but it's a lot. They both play very, very well. This is based on the Martyr of Sands Proclamation of Rebirth deck that used to be in Modern and probably still is. Martyr of Sands is a 1-drop that gains a lot of life. The deck used to play Proclamation of Rebirth, which was a way to reanimate multiple of them. That has since been eclipsed and replaced by Abiding Grace. This can reanimate a Martyr of Sands every turn, forever. And when your hand is pretty full of white cheap cards or Sky Hussars that you don't actually want to cast, you can be gaining 20 life a turn or something crazy or more. I know that in the finals, Will was playing against Slivers, and he ended the game at above 200 life. So achievement unlocked. This deck is very cool. You get positive on life with Martyr of Sands, which turns on your Speaker of the Heavens and lets you start producing angels. You've got defense for those cards with Benevolent Bodyguard. Champion of the Parish gets shockingly large, shockingly fast, because every card seems to be a human. And you can loop a Benevolent Bodyguard to give your Champion of the Parish pro whatever color, hit your opponent, and then reanimate it with Abiding Grace, and do it again the next turn, while getting larger every turn. Skyclave for interaction. Ranger of Eos to tutor up some stuff. Notably, Kami of False Hope. This card is kind of disgusting with Abiding Grace. You are able to set up a Spore Frog lock, basically fogging every turn. This deck may not look like it's crazy, but it really is, and Will plays it really, really well. He's been working on it a while. Chalice of Life Death was eventually brought in for when he needs to be able to kill a control opponent, and that's insane. Tragic Poet lets you get back Abiding Graces that were destroyed or countered. So if you sideboard in Tragic Poet, if you ever manage to stick Tragic Poet, you can use it to get back an Abiding Grace, which will get back the Tragic Poet, and then kind of protect it there. So this really feels like a Staxy deck that's super hard to outgrind and really hard to interact with. I was watching someone who was playing Affinity. It was a list they borrowed from me. It had Kappa Cannoneer. They had a Kappa Cannoneer with, I think, 7 counters on it. and they were able to play an artifact and attack every turn with an ever larger Kappa Cannoneer, and Will was just able to produce more life, which is crazy. This deck's very good. I am personally sick of losing to it. I think it's a little soft to some unfair things, like unfair Storm decks that don't use the graveyard. Its interaction to stop that is pretty light. It's Swords to Plowshares and Skyclaves mostly, as well as potentially Kami of the False Hope. So if you're looking to beat this deck, like I am, I would consider playing something like Goblin Storm. It's a deck that can win, can do nearly an infinite amount of damage, doesn't use a graveyard, so Tormod's Crypt doesn't matter. Seal of Cleansing would be pretty good against Fecundities, so that's something to look out for. But I think some unfair deck like that could be pretty good. It's just really hard to grind this deck out with a mid-range or a control list. It's tricky. You got to be ready to answer problem permanence a lot. This deck is good. And I will try to talk a little bit less about every deck as we go, just so we can see them all, and this video is not an hour long. I tend to ramble a lot, so I gotta watch myself. Anyway, great deck. Congratulations to Will for dusting his hands of us and taking the win on that one. Next up, we have a sick mono blue tempo list. It's a Delver True Name Nemesis deck. Yeah, True Name is $3, guys. Get in there. Playing powerful restricted cards, Treasure Cruise, and Gush, as well as leveraging Mystic Sanctuary to buy back the powerful spells. It plays well with Gush, and also Deprive, which you can use to pick up your Mystic Sanctuary and reset your Treasure Cruise or something, as well as Accumulated Knowledge to get some advantage, as well as cheap threats. So I played against this deck with my blue-red spells list, and I gotta say, I can't believe that I played the Accumulated Knowledge Mirror. We had a really crazy turn where I think I cast some threat, maybe a Haughty Gen, and it ate a mana leak, tapping Luke low. Then I was able to play a 1-mana Tolarian Terror. He foiled it, pitching his last cards were foil, card, island, so he pitched his hand to counter my Tolarian Terror because we're kind of at like a stalled board state, and then I played another 1-mana Tolarian Terror, which resolved, of course. Then on his turn, he, I believe, rips an Accumulated Knowledge, casts it, draws 2 or 3 cards because I had 1 or 2 in my graveyard, and then he casts a Gush, picking up 2 islands, plays a land for the turn, and then I think casts like a Fairy Miscreant and drew a card. It was crazy. Like, the deck went from no cards to a lot of cards really fast. True Name is really, really powerful, obviously, especially if you back it up with dazes and things that you can tap out on turn 3. This deck is good. I felt like I dodged a bullet getting through it. I thought I was going to lose, but I did take that match. Luckily, Haughty Gen Resolve lines up pretty well against the flying threats. It's a 2/4, it's an X4 against a bunch of 3X flyers. One thing to note in this board, and I'm going to talk about this a lot, Energy Flux. This is like Kataki War's Wage, but crazy. So this card actually showed up. I think there were somewhere between 8 and 13 of them in sideboards. Because mono blue, 8 cast, or I guess 2-color affinity. Any affinity deck, any deck playing artifact lands and thought casts, people are ready for it. 92 cents gets you 3 of these, and I will say, even with Spell Pierces in your affinity deck in the board, if an Energy Flux sticks, you're probably going to lose the game, right? You're going to sacrifice some lands and all your Ornithopters, and it's going to be awful. People are ready for affinity. I don't know if I would take 8 cast to a tournament because I'm scared of Energy Flux. So keep that in mind. Really cool sideboard tech in Hibernation, because the next deck we're going to see is Mono Green Living Wish Creature Combo. So for those of you who haven't seen it, the combo is Scurry Oak. You make a guy whenever a 1/1 counter is put on it, and it evolves. And Ivy Lane Denizen, whenever a green creature ETBs, put a counter on it. So you have a Scurry Oak in play. You cast an Ivy Lane Denizen. You evolve your Scurry Oak. You make a 1/1. The 1/1 triggers Ivy Lane, target Scurry Oak, make a 1/1, and then you loop that, ad infinitum, and you create infinite squirrels and an infinitely large. I guess all of your creatures become. No, your Scurry Oak becomes infinitely large. Holden played this. I think it's a super smart deck. He correctly identified, I think, that Once Upon a Time is one of the busted cards in the format, and you should probably consider playing it. I think he said he wants to play Once Upon a Time, Hymn to Turok, or Days. He had a list of cards that like are kind of how he starts building a deck because he wants to play something like Busted, and this is a good Busted card. Gallag Readers I really like. I hadn't seen this. That's cool. I really like Prosperous Innkeeper because not only does it help you ramp to casting your 7 mana worth of spells, but you also generate infinite mana off of the Scurry Oak Ivy Lane Denizen combo. This looks like a really good list. Note that he's playing 4 Living Wishes, so he has 4 Scurry Oaks in the main deck, and I assume there's an Ivy Lane in the board. Yep, and then his sideboard is all creatures and lands to Living Wish for. Going through Crawling Barrens, I bet that comes in against Control. That's an awesome mana outlet that gets big and dodges a lot of removal. This is against Control decks, Flyers, Planeswalkers, Graveyard, Catch-all / Enchantress kind of things, discard. All of this makes sense. Herdbaloth. Let me read Gallag Readers. Herdbaloth is interesting. It's another Scurry Oak for Ivy Lane Denizen. It's just a 5 mana Scurry Oak, right? Because you put a 1/1 counter on it, and then it makes a 4/4 green beast, which triggers Ivy Lane. So you go infinite with that. That makes sense. Play this 4 Scurry Oaks main because they're good, and then since you have a 5th copy, put 1 in the board. That makes sense. Duplicant for removal, and Gaia's Revenge as another card against Control. This deck looks good. Holden did really well with it. He took 3rd. I think this deck is awesome. I think it's very cool to be in a format where 2 monocolored decks were in the top. 3, actually. All 3 have been monocolored. That probably speaks some to the fact that our mana bases aren't that good because we're a budget format, but I do think there's some room for being greedy or playing 2-color decks. Very cool list. I like Living Wish being so cheap. I will talk about this list. I saw a match between this and Martyr Proc, and I was like, Martyr Proc probably has trouble with this. They don't have a ton of interaction for creature combos, and Infinite is bigger than 200, so 200 life isn't good enough. But then I saw the game get stalled out by the Abiding Grace Kamiya False Hopes lock to buy some time, and that made me reconsider the matchup. I don't think this is the silver bullet to take down Martyr Proc. Martyr Proc, I think, is the only deck that beat it today, but I do think it has some game. But I really think this is a really well-built version of this. I've seen some versions in the past, and I really like this one that Holden put together. So, good job. Slivers. I played against this. I mulled pretty deep looking for land in Game 2 and died with a Anger of the Gods in my hand. But Game 1, I just got rolled. The combination of Gemhide Sliver plus Cloud Shredder Sliver, so you can really just vomit your hand, and then you've also got Winding Way to gas back up. Once Upon a Time helps you assemble it, and then you just play a bunch of slivers that get buffed. This deck looked very, very good. Not a lot to talk to about that. I do like that it gets to play Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory. Very cool that 5-color tribal, or I guess really Naya tribal, can be enabled in that way. I like that this deck exists. It gets out of 3 damage board wipe range very quickly. I think that if you're looking to beat Slivers, a deck that interacts early with Lightning Bolts or Path or Swords, and then potentially has board wipes is a good way to do it. But I love that this deck was there. I love that I lost to it as much as you can love losing, and very excited to see more Slivers going forward. 8-Rack, we've got some videos on this if you want to check them out. I will potentially put a link up there. This is the Chris special. It's how he likes to introduce new folks to the format. This deck is awesome. I'll be pretty quick about it because we've done a deck tech and some games with it. It's a lot of discard spells, and then you kill your opponent with the rack. Go Blank is good as Grave Hate. Turok's a lot of money in the sideboard, but when they come in, they're good. The reason they're not main is because Chris does not want to be playing creatures in his Smallpox deck generally, which makes sense to me. I think this deck's very good. It's maintained a really good win rate for a while. I think Chris is an excellent player, and he's very good at this style of deck, just making like the right decision really early on, because if you misread the matchup and you take the wrong card with Inquisition, you could lose right there. But he's very good at eking out the value and closing out the game in a way that I think a lot of players aren't. And quite honestly, this deck's very powerful. I would consider playing this in a tournament, such as a Win a Taiga event in February, which I'll talk about later. Affinity. This is not the same list that I did a deck tech on, but it's very similar. You have Affinity creatures, Thought Monitors, Forging the Anchor, and Thoughtcast. I believe this list is playing in the main board 52 artifacts. All of the lands count towards Affinity. They're all artifact lands. So your Forging the Anchor is going to be even better than mine were. I crunched the numbers in the last video I did on it, and it looked very good, but it looks even better here. Yep, 4 Cranial Platings. I think that personally, I would maybe try to max out on Ginger Brutes before Patchwork Automatons, just because I'm trying to win with 4 Cranial Plating. But I don't know. Obviously, this deck did just fine, or this deck did very well, so I can't say that it's not better than the version I've put together. But my initial read is that Ginger Brute plus Cranial Plating makes sense. But honestly, you can't really go wrong with this list. I will say, in the sideboard, it looks like we've got 3 Metallic Rebukes. I think going forward, maybe all of us Affinity players have to think more about being able to beat the Energy Flux. Because I don't know if 3 Metallic Rebuke does it. So if you're interested in being an Affinity guy, keep that in mind. Yeah, that's a tricky card to beat. So very nice list. I like having all the lands be artifacts. That's cool. This deck is very cool. Mono Black Hogak. So it's a Bridge from Below Cabal Therapy deck. You play a bunch of creatures that mill you, like Mire Triton, Stitcher Supplier, etc. I think this card is reprinted in... It was reprinted in Jumpstart. I was hoping it would go down more, but it looks like it hasn't. Carrion Feeder to help pop some of those. You want to sack things like your Undead Butler. You have Icarids and Prized Amalgams, and then you're casting Hogak. Deck looks very good. It did well. I like Silent Gravestones. It's cool against targeted graveyard hate. Dark Blast is a good way to get things like Containment Priests off the field. Good list. I really like it. It's definitely graveyard reliant, but we don't actually have a lot of static graveyard hate in the format. It's mostly like Tormod's Crypts and things like that, one-time use exiles. There's not a lot of Rest in Pieces, although there is Wheel of Sun and Moon. Yeah, I like this list. Very cool to see. I played against this in round 4. Simon put together this Luris of the Dream Den Black-Red Pyromancer list. I think it's very good. I think he's still tuning some of the numbers to enable Delirium easily. He's playing with some Tar Fires to get Tribal, and he's playing with Seal of Fire to get Enchantment to help turn on his DRCs. But this is just really low-to-the-ground good cards, right? Everything costs 1 or 2, kind of as a requirement for Luris. I mean, Murderous Cut, but that's a 1 or 2 mana spell. The mana is pretty good in having 12 dual lands, which is really nice. I will say, I was playing blue-red, my mana was worse, and I had some trouble due to it. So keep in mind when you're selecting your 2-color combination, you want to check the prices on your full set of like 12 duels, because it's really nice to have good mana. But yeah, this deck is excellent. Go Blank was really good against me. It took 2 cards out of my hand and kind of destroyed my graveyard, which makes sense. I think that the blue-red Gen deck loses to some graveyard hate, which is why I probably wouldn't take it to a tournament. But I might play with it to get it better. I think maybe like adding some Young Peasies or something could help with that. But I think this deck is awesome. I think it's here to stay. Just the fact that you can have Luris, DRC, and Mishra's Bauble for like $10 is insane. There's always going to be something here, I think. So really excellent. So Simon wraps up our top 8. A couple other lists I want to talk about that I just think are crazy and I really enjoy. Riley's been working on Rebels. So this is blue-white Rebels. It gets Zerda as a companion because all of the creatures have an activated ability. This list basically, as I understand it, looks to develop rebels that search for other rebels, hold up mana, and eventually tutor a mirror entity to kill your opponent. The rebel core, the shell of it, is very, very cheap, as you can see by these low numbers, which allows you to play swords, counterspell, Sol Ring Ponder, and have a good mana base, as well as having a decent amount of mana left in the sideboard. Calamity's Wake is very cool. I like this. Riley's also been playing with a version that plays Cloud Post, and honestly, I think it might be the best Cloud Post deck that I've seen. I think it's way better than Mono Green Post. So shout out to Riley for, I think, making Cloud Post playable. I actually just played a little bit through the Discord against that list, and it looked really, really nice. So very cool list here. This is a red-white initiative list, Death and Taxes initiative. Spencer brought that, and it looks very good. It's getting to play some cool cards in Luminarch Aspirant, Thalia's, Spellbinders. Palace Jailer, I think, is insane. Card is just very good. I love Timeless Dragon. I love to see it in a list. You can see here, the red-white lands are really expensive, right? You get 4 dual lands, untapped potentially dual lands, and it's $7.24. Compare that to Rakdos Pyromancer, and for 12 dual lands, we're spending like $3.50. So I do think that's something to think about, just based on availability and print runs. Figuring out what 2-color combinations have the most affordable mana may be a big question of what 2-color combinations you should play. I really like this list. I think it's cool. I think cards like Loot Dispute are very interesting. Caves of Chaos Adventurer looks strong and fun. I like this list. I would like to see it continue to develop and do well. I think it's very cool. This, I think, was the craziest list that I've seen. This is the craziest list I saw last night, I think. It is an Asmo food deck. So playing the package of Asmo, Oval Chase, Underworld Cookbook, as well as Scrapwork Mutt to kind of dig for it and bend something. Architects of Will can also help you set that up because cycling lets you cast Asmo. And then we're leveraging our food to cast Thought Monitors, Trash for Treasures, and Tinkers. So we're trying to loot a Godfarer's Gift, an Inkwell Leviathan, or, God help your opponent, a Brutaclad into play. Now that's a reader. If you're not a commander player, you probably don't know what Brutaclad does. It turns all of your treasures into something better than treasures. It's crazy. This list looks very, very cool. I think that oh gosh, who made this? Simon worked on this with Landon and Simon worked on this. I think this idea has a lot more room to be explored, and I actually think Asmo has a lot more room to be explored. My roommate Andrew, who you've seen on the channel a lot, is a big Asmo fan. He has been trying Sarenth's Steelseeker in potentially like a black-green or red-green version, or Jund if the mana works. This is obviously like kind of a different direction to go, but I think this list is very playable as well. I love Godfarer's statue in the sideboard. I love that card. Such a cool Tinker target as well. This list kind of blew my mind. I think it's very awesome. This list also had me kind of walking over and watching, and like I wanted to see more of it. This list is built around Zombie Infestation. Pitch 2 cards, make a zombie, and Faith of the Devoted to drain your opponent whenever you pitch a card. We're leveraging 4 Squee and 4 Master of Death, bringing them back to our hand every turn and pitching them to make zombies. We're gaining value, pitching them to Bone Shards and Faithless. We're milling them over with Commune with the Gods, which also helps find our 2 enchantment payoffs. Very smart deck building. Wally. Sorry, I'm trying to credit people, but I'm also bad at remembering names, and my mind is soft. Ritual of Soot, very cool. I really liked watching this deck. It was cool to see it grind some people out. The mana base looks like it took some work to put together. I'm glad that Wally had to assemble it and I didn't. But I will say $10 on your mana base. That's a big percentage. I'm just going to go back again to Black Red Luris, and this mana base is $3.60. Guys, we're working with $30 here. I'm not saying that it's better or worse to spend $3 versus $10 on your lands. I'm just saying you really got to think about it, and you got to think about the trade-off. His mana looked good whenever I watched, so I think this is a well-constructed mana base. But yeah, 10's a big number. Keep that in mind. And this is the Asmo list that Andrew played. He's on the Academy Manufactor Angie's Ravager plan, as well as FTK. I think this version's very good and cool. Like I said, he's experimenting with it some. I think he said that Ravager didn't feel too good. Fireweaver did feel good. Dreams of Steel and Oil did feel good. And Red Elemental Blast is just because he had some extra budget. I'm not sure that'll stay forever, but he said the list feels pretty good, and he's been a fan of this deck for a long time, and he's been... he keeps saying, like, okay, I'm going to play it, and if I, like, lose a couple games, I'm not going to build it. And then he, like, wins games, and it feels good, and I think he just ordered the cards last night. So he's stuck playing it, and it looks really, really good and fun to play. So yeah, those are the decks I wanted to share. Like I said, I'm just really excited that we had a 23-person tournament. That's more than, a decent-sized shop gets for Modern sometimes. Shout out to Simon and everyone at that card shop for getting involved and being part of this. Really excited to see us gaining some traction. On that note, I want to talk about the Discord a little bit. Notably, we do have an upcoming tournament. This is going to be around the Cincinnati area on February 25th. It'll be budget vintage at 4 p.m. It's $20 entry, and this is the prize structure, which I think is crazy. If we get to 30 players, which I think is super doable, not only are we paying out like $400 in credit, it's probably credit, it might be cash, I actually don't know. I should know that, but I don't. Sorry, guys. Assume it's credit so that you don't get mad at me if it's not. But there will be a Taiga going up for first. Everett's helping to contribute that, so shout out to Everett. But I would love to see 30 people there. I think it's very attainable. So keep that in mind if you're in the area, or kind of in the area, and you can make the drive down. Also, talking about the Discord server a little bit more, we're currently sitting at around 70 people. I'll put the link to join the Discord in the video description. If you want to come hang out and check it out, we have a ton of brewing going on all the time. We have 3 separate channels that often get used simultaneously to brew decks, like the hit deck 8 Kids in a Trench Coat. Shout out to Everett for the deck name. That is an 8 Pyromancer list with Iconoclast and Young Peasy. We got some High Tide stuff going on. Over here, Andrew's talking about Asmo food. There's some Tinker lists. We're just constant brewing. I truly have not been able to keep up lately, which is really exciting to see. Very friendly place. We have a Looking for Games channel where we encourage people to just meet up. Monday night is kind of the de facto night for playing some games online, but you can play whenever. I played a couple games earlier tonight. We have tournament results where people can post how they did. There was also a Nick Fit Chain of Smog list, which looked insane. So basically what I'm saying is this format is amazing, and if you're not playing, and if you're not in this Discord, you truly are missing out. I think that a new underexplored format is a beautiful thing. I think it's very exciting to be kind of like looking at a new frontier and not really knowing what the top decks look like. Like, we have a decent idea of what's good, but we don't have a firmly established metagame. So now's really the best time to jump into it. I think that the metagame will eventually establish itself and will have top decks. And once that happens, that's awesome too, because we get to brew against them, right? If Black Red Luris is winning every week, then we get to start playing decks that like mainboard Wheel of Sun and Moon or something like that. You know what I mean? So yeah, just another shameless ad. You should definitely check out the Discord. There's a link in the description. We have a tournament coming up in February in Cincinnati. I and some friends will be at SCG Con Indianapolis, February 3rd through 5th. I'm pretty sure it's Indy, not Columbus. Yeah. So swing by. We're going to have some decks there and probably try to make some noise and get people to try out the format. And keep your eyes and ears posted because we're looking at getting an online tournament going sometime in the first quarter of the year, probably closer to April. So that'll be an online, probably free entry tournament with prize support. So, guys, a lot of awesome things are happening. I've been having a ton of fun hanging out with the whole gang that has been brewing and working on stuff. It's been very fun getting to know new folks and getting to see new takes on deck lists. And honestly, I don't play other Magic now. I play Budget Vintage and I cube. I have a Peasant Cube that I love. But since I've been in this format, I have not played EDH or Modern or Legacy or Arena. This is how I play Magic now. And I gotta say, it feels good. It feels really good, especially because kind of contention. Like, it's contentious times in Magic, right? People love to complain about bans in Modern or Initiative ruining Legacy or Ragavan and the pitch elementals and Modern Horizons 2 making Modern a rotating format, yada, yada, yada. And I gotta say, I feel very safe in my $30 budget vintage bunker. Where I am, Wizards of the Coast can't touch me. Wizards of the Coast can't print broken cards into our format and ruin it because broken cards cost more than $30. So we're just hanging out. Some people have asked, like, oh, what happens when if the format gets big and there are targeted buyouts to make someone's deck over budget? And right now, I just got to say, if we get to that point, I'm a happy man. I would love to have to worry about our effect on the supply chain and gobbling up all the cheap cards. I don't think we'll come to that for quite a long time. I think we have a very bright future ahead of us in budget vintage. So if you're into the format, spread the word, get some friends into it. Or join us in the Discord for some games online if your friends aren't sold yet. And guys, just keep brewing. There's a lot more to explore. I think we're still finding new decks, and I think we'll continue to find new decks and refine old decks. So again, shout out to everyone who helped make the 23-person in-person tournament happen, and I think there's even better things coming down the pipeline. So thanks for hanging out with us, guys.